This impressive building behind me is Britannia Works. It was built in 1828 and back then it was home to several companies. But in 1871 a gentleman called Wilson Stafford moved his little hat business into the Britannia Works, and in 1896 his little company became a big company and he took over the whole of the works. I'm stood by the old entrance here to Wilson and Stafford, the hat manufacturer. It must have been really impressive back in the day, but sadly they made their money out of the slave trade. They were actually hat manufacturers for the slaves that worked on the plantations. The slave owners were obliged by law to supply hats for the plantation workers. They're commonly known as billycock hats, or you may know them as bowler hats. There were many variations, many made out of wool and felt. But with the abolishment of slavery in 1865, Wilson and Stafford had a little problem. How on earth were they going to continue? Luckily, fashions changed and Wilson and Stafford survived. And then with the outbreak of the Great War and World War II, they got the contract to build military hats. They made military hats for the men and the women troops. During the war years though, employers had to ensure their employees' safety. So they bricked up the cellar and they became the air raid shelters here. These derelict rooms and walls that you see behind me here were the old packing rooms. The gents was packed downstairs and the ladies' hats were packed upstairs. In the 1960s, hats became very in vogue and Wilson and Stafford were at the top of the game. Listen to Mary Thurman's lovely little story about a little window that used to be here by the bridge.
I worked at Wilson and Stafford's for nearly 20 years. I worked in the settling shop, rolling the felt up and putting in the water. Then I moved from there to where they cut the brims of the hats. Then onto the box shop. This is where we put stitches into cardboard boxes for packing the hats. We used to sit up by the end window and I saw this man and he heard the wolf whistles. The photo is me in the window and my now husband of 60 years.
Sadly now, the lover's window that used to be up there has been bricked up now. But what a marvellous story. This hat factory must have had families. It must have changed lives. It was one of over a dozen hat factories at the height of the hat manufacturing here in Atherstone. And Atherstone is still known as the Hatter's Town. Sadly, Wilson and Stafford were the last remaining hat manufacturer here in Atherstone, but they closed their doors in 1999. There are plans to actually get the building demolished and keep the fascia wall that's on the high street, or part of it, but it could cost as much as £500,000 to preserve that, so it's very doubtful they will. I don't think it's going to be that long and we're going to see another new housing estate here on this site. Who knows? Keep your fingers crossed. I do hope that you've enjoyed our little trip back of history at Wilson and Stafford Hat Factory here in Atherstone. Nikki and I both feel it very, very important to share history. We should always look back and learn from it. Take care.